Welcome to my YouTube channel, Heardbreak Chronicles, a place where you will hear a large number of fascinating and intriguing chronicles about hearts that are completely broken by female betrayal. Let's not drag on for long. Let's get straight to the point. Treason on Thanksgiving Day. My name's Ryan, I'm 34, and up until last Thursday, I thought I had a happy marriage with my wife, Amanda. She's 32, we've been married for 10 years. And we have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Amanda and I met in college, and for the longest time I thought we had a rock-solid relationship. Sure, we had the occasional argument, but who doesn't? Thanksgiving has always been a huge deal in my family. Every year, my parents host a massive dinner at their house, and all the extended family comes. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and even a few close family friends. It's loud, chaotic, and always full of love. Or at least it used to be. This year's Thanksgiving changed everything. Amanda had been acting a little off for the past few months. She was more distant, more distracted. She spent a lot of time on her phone, always texting or scrolling, and when I'd ask her about it, she'd shrug it off or make a joke about work or her friends. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something in the way she avoided eye contact that left me uneasy. And then there was the drinking. Amanda's always liked a glass of wine now and then, but recently, it felt like it was becoming a crutch. She'd pour herself a drink as soon as Lily went to bed, sometimes even earlier. I'd ask if everything was okay, and she'd laugh it off, saying she just needed to unwind. I figured maybe she was stressed. We've all been there, right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Thanksgiving morning started out like any other. We packed up the car, loaded Lily into her booster seat, and drove to my parents' house. Amanda seemed unusually chipper, almost too chipper, but I didn't think much of it. She even jumped in to help my mom in the kitchen, laughing and chatting like everything was perfect. By the time dinner was served, Amanda had already had a few glasses of wine, but she wasn't sloppy yet, just loud, laughing a little too hard at my cousin Eric's jokes. Eric's around my age, 35, and he's always been the family charmer. He's the guy who can light up a room with his stories and jokes, the one who always has the best stories from his time traveling or whatever job he's working this month. He's fun to be around, but he's also the kind of guy who pushes boundaries. I noticed he and Amanda seemed to be talking a lot, but I told myself I was being paranoid. It's Thanksgiving. People talk. That's what happens. After dinner, the whole family moved to the living room for dessert and games. Amanda was on her 4th or 5th drink by then, and it was clear she was drunk. She kept laughing loudly, leaning into Eric as he told another one of his stories. My mom gave me a look, that mom look that says, "Are you seeing this?" But I waved it off. Amanda's just having fun, I thought. No big deal. But then Amanda disappeared. So did Eric. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe Amanda went to the bathroom. Maybe Eric stepped outside for a smoke. But as the minutes ticked by, that uneasy feeling I'd been pushing down came roaring back. Something wasn't right. I checked the kitchen, the backyard, even the basement where the kids were playing. Nothing. And then I saw it. The door to the guest bedroom was closed. My heart sank. I don't know how I knew, but I just did. My hands were shaking as I reached for the doorknob. I stood there for what felt like forever, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. I opened the door. The room was empty, or so I thought. The bed was made. Nothing looked out of place. But there was this strange energy in the room, like the air had shifted. I looked around, my heart pounding, and then I noticed it. A half-empty glass of wine on the nightstand. Amanda's wine. I knew it was hers because it had lipstick smudges on the rim. My stomach churned as a million thoughts raced through my mind. Where was she? Where was Eric? I left the room and tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being ridiculous. Maybe Amanda had just left her glass there earlier while helping my mom set up. But I couldn't relax. Something didn't feel right, and it wasn't going away. I wandered back to the living room, trying to act like everything was fine. Amanda was back now, sitting on the couch with her drink, laughing and talking like nothing had happened. Eric was across the room, chatting with my dad. They didn't seem suspicious, but I couldn't stop staring at them. I felt like I was losing my mind. That's the thing about betrayal. Sometimes, it's not about what you see. It's about what you feel. And that night, I felt it. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out what. The moment everything came crashing down was surreal. After dessert, the family was gathered in the living room, swapping stories and playing board games. Amanda, still holding her glass of wine, stumbled into the center of the room. At first, I thought she was just drunk and clumsy. But then she raised her glass like she was making a toast. Everyone, listen up, she slurred, a wide, wobbly grin on her face. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. I felt my stomach tighten, knowing nothing good was going to come out of this. I just want to say, Amanda began, swaying slightly, I'm so grateful for family, for love, for... She paused, giggling, and looked around the room. Her eyes landed on Eric, and my heart dropped. For Eric. The room tensed. My mom shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My dad coughed. Eric froze, his smile slipping as he glanced nervously at me. You know, Amanda continued, oblivious to the tension she was creating, Eric's just so wonderful, so funny, so good at keeping secrets. She giggled again, and my hands clenched into fists. Amanda, I said, my voice low but firm. Maybe it's time to sit down. She ignored me, her grin widening. Oh, come on, Ryan. Don't be such a buzzkill. This is Thanksgiving. Let's be honest with each other for once. She turned back to the room, raising her glass higher. The truth is, I've been sleeping with Eric. And honestly, it's been the best part of my year. The room exploded. My mom gasped audibly, clutching her chest like she'd been shot. My dad jumped up, shouting, What the hell, Amanda? Eric turned white as a sheet, trying to stammer out an excuse. Meanwhile, Amanda just stood there, swaying and smiling like she hadn't just dropped a bombshell that would tear the family apart. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My ears were ringing, and my vision blurred. The woman I'd loved, the mother of my child, had just announced to everyone that she'd been cheating on me. With my cousin. On Thanksgiving. Eric tried to leave the room, mumbling something about needing air, but my dad stopped him in his tracks. Oh, no you don't, he said, his voice cold and sharp. You're going to stand right here and explain yourself. Dad, it's fine, I managed to say, though my voice was shaky. He's not the one who made vows to me. I turned to Amanda, who was now plopping herself down on the couch, looking entirely unbothered. You want to explain this? She shrugged, taking another sip of her wine. What's there to explain? You're boring, Ryan. You've always been boring. Eric's fun. He makes me feel alive. Honestly, I'm doing us both a favor. The room was silent, except for the sound of the clock ticking on the wall. Everyone was staring at Amanda in shock, their faces a mix of disgust and disbelief. I could feel my mom's hand on my arm, gently squeezing, but I couldn't look at her. Couldn't look at anyone. Finally, I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. All right, I said quietly. You win, Amanda. If this is who you are, I want no part of it. Growled, his face red with anger. You don't get to defend yourself. Not after this. Eric's eyes darted toward the door, like he was contemplating making a run for it. But my dad wasn't having it. He stepped closer to Eric, his voice dropping to a low growl. You're going to stand here and own up to what you've done. You've disrespected this family in ways I didn't think possible. And with Amanda, of all people, have you no shame? Eric's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean for it to happen. We didn't plan it, he stammered, his voice barely audible. It just happened. It just happened? I shouted, stepping forward. The dam holding back my anger finally broke. It just happened? What, did you trip and fall into bed with my wife? Is that your excuse? My hands were shaking, and it took everything in me not to swing at him right then and there. Ryan, calm down, Amanda said, her tone infuriatingly dismissive. She was still sitting on the couch, swirling her wine like none of this was her problem. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing myself? I repeated, my voice rising. You're the one who just told our entire family you've been cheating on me with my cousin. But I'm the one embarrassing myself. Oh, come on, she scoffed. This marriage has been dead for years, Ryan. You just didn't want to admit it. You work all the time, you're never any fun, and frankly, you've been checked out for ages. I needed someone who actually paid attention to me. The room was deathly silent. All eyes were on us, and I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. My mom was sitting in the corner, her face buried in her hands, while my dad stood like a sentinel, his fists clenched at his sides. My sister, Sarah, was glaring daggers at Amanda, her jaw tight with barely contained rage. So this is my fault? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. You're blaming me for your decision to sleep with Eric? Amanda rolled her eyes. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that if you'd been a better husband, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. That was it. That was the moment I knew there was no saving this. Whatever love I'd had for Amanda was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow ache in my chest. I turned to Eric, who was still standing there like a deer in headlights. You know what? I said, my voice quieter now but no less furious. You two deserve each other. You really do. And I hope you're happy, Eric, because you just threw away your relationship with this entire family for, what? A few nights of fun. Ryan, please, Eric tried, stepping toward me. Don't, I said sharply, holding up a hand. Don't you dare try to explain yourself. You've already said enough. And you? My dad said, turning to Amanda with an expression so cold it made even her flinch. You're done here. Get your things and leave. Now. What? Amanda said, blinking at him like he'd just spoken in another language. You can't just kick me out. This is my family, too. Not anymore, my dad said firmly. You've made it very clear where your priorities lie. You don't get to sit here and play the victim after what you've done. Amanda's face hardened, and for a moment, I thought she was going to argue. But then she shrugged and stood up, smoothing her dress as if this were just another night out. Fine, she said. If that's how you want to play it, I'll go. But don't think for a second that this is over, Ryan. You're going to hear from my lawyer. Can't wait, I muttered under my breath as she grabbed her purse and strutted out of the room. Eric hesitated, glancing between me and my dad, before finally following her like a lost puppy. The silence that followed their departure was deafening. My mom let out a shaky breath and stood up, walking over to me and pulling me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, honey, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. You didn't deserve any of this. No, I said, my voice hollow. I didn't, but it's done now. The rest of the night was a blur. Family members took turns offering their condolences, but I could barely hear them. All I could think about was Amanda's smug smile, the way she'd looked at me like I was nothing, like I'd never been anything. After Amanda and Eric's shocking revelation, the house felt like a battlefield. The silence that followed her declaration was heavy, suffocating, and filled with unspoken words. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for my reaction. But all I could feel was this void inside me, like someone had pulled out my heart and replaced it with a block of ice. The first thing I noticed was the sound of my mom crying. She was sitting in the corner of the room, her face buried in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. My dad stood stiff and stoic, but I could see the vein in his temple pulsing as he clenched his fists at his sides. My sister, Sarah, sat frozen, her mouth slightly open, as though she couldn't quite process what she just heard. And then there was Amanda, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. She wasn't crying, wasn't apologizing. She just sat there, casually sipping her wine, as if announcing her affair with my cousin in front of my entire family was just another part of her day. Her lack of remorse was like a slap in the face. Eric, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to sink into the floor and disappear. He kept shifting from foot to foot, avoiding everyone's gaze, his face pale and his hands shaking. He tried to speak, but every time he opened his mouth, my dad would shoot him a look that made him shut it again. I didn't know what to do. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. This was supposed to be a day for family, for love, for gratitude. Instead, it had turned into my worst nightmare. The woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with had not only betrayed me but done so in the most humiliating way possible. In front of everyone I cared about, I finally managed to find my voice, though it came out quieter than I expected. "You're serious, Amanda? You're really doing this? Here? Now?" She rolled her eyes, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, come on, Ryan. Don't act so surprised. You had to know this marriage was over. I've been miserable for years." "Miserable?" I repeated, my voice rising. "And instead of talking to me, instead of trying to work through it, you decided to cheat? With my cousin?" Eric flinched at my words, but Amanda just shrugged. "It's not like you were ever around. You were always too busy with work or being Mr. Perfect Dad. I needed more." "More?" My voice cracked as the weight of her words hit me. "I gave you everything, Amanda. I worked my ass off to give you and Lily the life you wanted. I loved you. And this is how you repay me." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time that night, her calm demeanor cracked. "Don't act like you're some perfect husband, Ryan. You were so focused on being the provider that you forgot how to be a partner. You think I wanted to go looking for attention elsewhere? You pushed me to it." I was stunned into silence. My dad wasn't. "That's enough," he said, his voice booming through the room. "Don't you dare stand there and blame Ryan for your mistakes. You chose to cheat. You chose to betray your family. Don't try to spin this like you're the victim." Amanda scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. "Of course you're taking his side. You always do. This family has always treated me like an outsider. Because you've never acted like part of this family?" My sister, Sarah, snapped, finally finding her voice. "You've always been selfish and manipulative, Amanda. But this is a new low, even for you." Amanda glared at Sarah but didn't respond. Instead, she turned her attention back to me. "You're not perfect, Ryan. You think you are, but you're not. And maybe if you'd been paying attention, you would have seen this coming." I stared at her, my chest heaving with a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was trying to justify her actions, trying to make it my fault. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me. This was about her. Her selfishness. Her inability to take responsibility for her actions. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You know what, Amanda? You're right. I'm not perfect. But I didn't deserve this. And I'm done. We're done." She blinked, her expression faltering for the first time. "What do you mean?" "I mean I want a divorce," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to stay married to someone who doesn't respect me. Someone who would humiliate me in front of my family. I deserve better. Lily deserves better." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. But then she shrugged, her expression hardening again. "Fine, if that's what you want. But don't think for a second that you're getting full custody of Lily. She's my daughter too." My blood ran cold at her words. The thought of her trying to drag Lily into this mess was almost too much to bear. But I couldn't think about that now. One battle at a time. I turned to Eric, who was still standing there, looking like he might faint. "And you?" I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "Don't ever show your face here again. You're dead to me." Eric opened his mouth, but my dad cut him off. "You heard him. Get out. Both of you." Amanda stood, grabbing her purse and tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Fine. We'll go. But don't think this is over, Ryan. You're going to regret this." With that, she stormed out, Eric trailing behind her like a beaten dog. The door slammed shut behind them, and the house fell into an uneasy silence. The rest of the night was a blur. My family tried to comfort me, but I could barely hear them over the storm raging in my head. All I could think about was how my life had just been torn apart, how everything I thought I knew was a lie. That night felt endless. After Amanda and Eric left, the house was still, but the silence wasn't comforting. It was oppressive, heavy with everything unsaid. My family stayed around, clearly worried about me, but I felt like I was barely present. My mind kept replaying her words over and over again. "You're boring, Ryan." The betrayal alone was devastating, but to hear her frame it as though it was somehow my fault, it was like pouring salt on an open wound. My mom sat beside me on the couch, rubbing my back like I was a little kid again. I wanted to push her away, to tell her I was fine, but I couldn't. I just sat there, staring blankly at the carpet. "Ryan," she said softly, "you didn't deserve this." "I know," I replied, though my voice didn't sound like my own. It was flat, mechanical. But here we are. My dad, who had been pacing the room like a caged animal, finally stopped and turned to me. "Son, listen to me. What Amanda did, that's on her. This isn't your fault. Don't let her try to make you believe otherwise." I nodded, but his words barely registered. Deep down, I knew he was right, but that didn't make it hurt any less. My wife, my partner, the person I thought I'd grow old with, had been lying to me for who knows how long. That's all
Eric,
for today. My cousin, comment,
someone I
and
trusted
of course,
my whole life,
subscribe
it
to
was
my
almost
channel
too much to
so you don't miss
process.
any exciting stories about betrayals, intrigues, and people's reactions. See you soon. The days that followed were a blur. I moved through them like a ghost, going through the motions but feeling completely disconnected from everything. I still had to be a dad, though. That was the one thing keeping me grounded. Lily didn't know what had happened. Thankfully. She was too young to understand, but she knew something was wrong. "Are you sad, Daddy?" she asked me one night as I was tucking her into bed. I forced a smile, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. "A little, sweetheart. But I'll be okay. I promise." Her little arms wrapped around my neck, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for her. She deserved better than to grow up in a home filled with lies and resentment. My first step was contacting a divorce attorney. It felt surreal, sitting in that office and laying everything out for a stranger. But the lawyer was kind, empathetic, and most importantly, practical. "We'll make sure you're protected," she said firmly. "And we'll make sure Lily's well-being is the top priority." Amanda, unsurprisingly, was combative when she found out. "You think you're just going to take Lily away from me?" she spat during one of our phone calls. "No, Amanda," I said, my voice steady. "I think we're going to figure out what's best for her. And what's best for her isn't watching her parents tear each other apart." Her response was a string of insults that I won't bother repeating here. But it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let her drag me down to her level. I was done fighting. I just wanted peace. As for my family, the fallout was significant. Eric tried to reach out a few times, leaving voicemails and even showing up at my house once. I didn't answer the door. My dad made it clear that Eric was no longer welcome at any family gatherings. "He burned that bridge," my dad said, his tone colder than I'd ever heard it. "He can live with the consequences." My mom, bless her heart, tried to be the peacemaker. "Maybe someday you can forgive him," she said cautiously one afternoon. "Not for his sake, but for yours." "I'm not there yet," I told her honestly. "Maybe I never will be, and that's okay." It's been a few weeks now. The divorce process is underway, and while it's not easy, I finally feel like I'm starting to heal. I've started seeing a therapist, which has been surprisingly helpful. Talking to someone who isn't emotionally involved has given me a new perspective on everything. I've realized that Amanda's actions say more about her than they ever did about me. She made her choices, and now she has to live with them. As for me, I'm focused on rebuilding my life. It's not going to be easy, but I know I'll get there. I have my family, who've been nothing but supportive. I have Lily, who reminds me every day why it's worth fighting for a better future. And most importantly, I have myself. For the first time in years, I'm putting my own happiness first. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that people aren't always who you think they are. But that doesn't mean you stop trusting. It just means you learn to trust yourself first. You learn to listen to your gut, to stand up for yourself, and to never settle for less than you deserve. Life's messy. It's unpredictable, but it goes on, and I'm ready to move forward. Need to learn to loosen up. Eric makes me feel alive. Honestly, you should be thanking him. At least someone in this family knows how to have fun. The room erupted again. My dad launched into another tirade, shouting about respect and family values. My mom broke into fresh tears, unable to contain her emotions. Sarah, my sister, was livid. She shouted over everyone, calling Amanda every name in the book, her face red with anger. I stood in the middle of the chaos, trying to process it all. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash that I couldn't stop. I couldn't even bring myself to shout or cry. I just stood there, feeling numb. Amanda had broken something inside me that I didn't even know could break. Finally, I held up my hands. Enough! I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. The room fell silent. Amanda looked at me, her expression unreadable, as if she couldn't understand why everyone was upset. This isn't going anywhere, I said quietly, but firmly. Amanda, you need to leave. Now. She smirked. Oh, really? You think you can just kick me out? I don't think, I replied, my voice steady. I know. Get your things and go. Amanda's smirk faltered, but she still stood up with exaggerated confidence. Fine, she said, grabbing her purse. You're all so uptight anyway. Have fun wallowing in your misery. She shot one last venomous look around the room before heading for the door. Eric hesitated, looking like he wanted to say something, but one look from my dad was enough to send him scurrying after her. When the door slammed shut behind them, the silence was deafening. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. She's insane, she said, shaking her head. Ryan, I am so sorry. I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. My mom came over and hugged me tightly, her tears soaking into my shirt. My dad put a hand on my shoulder, his expression a mix of sadness and anger. We're here for you, son, he said gruffly. Whatever you need. I nodded again, swallowing hard. Thanks, I whispered. But I think I just need some time. They understood. Slowly, the family began to disperse, offering quiet words of comfort as they left. When I was finally alone in the house, the weight of everything hit me all at once. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable, as I let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. This wasn't just about Amanda. It wasn't just about Eric. It was about everything I'd built my life around coming crashing down. The woman I'd loved, the family I'd trusted. It was all gone, and I didn't know how to move forward. But as I sat there, I realized one thing. I had to move forward. For Lily. For myself. For the life I still had ahead of me. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of something new. And no matter how much it hurt, I was determined to make it through. That's all for today. Like, comment, and, of course, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any exciting stories about betrayals, intrigues, and people's reactions. See you soon.